Hey gang, today what we're going to do is we're going to go over doing Brian May style harmonized guitar lines. I'm not saying this is exactly what Brian May did on this one. I'm not saying it's the best way. What I'm going to try and show you is it's an easy way to do it and sound pretty close to what we're going to do. I'll show you how to do it and then we'll build the lines and that'll be that. Hey, I do have the tab down below, so definitely you want to download that, and I'll show you how I break it all down. But no, my dog likes it. But I'll also put it up on the, as we're going through it, I'll put some of the tab up. So embed it right in the video so you can see what's going on that one. All right. Hey, as always, if you like this one, give it the thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for one or a couple of these every week. All right, we'll see you in just a second. Hey gang, we'll get to the video in just a second. I'm calling this easy, but it's only going to be easy if you keep in mind these four things. Number one, build it up slowly. So start with just the melody, then add a second voice. Even if that's where you stop, you'll have done something that's really nice, and two-part harmony can be very beautiful on the guitar. If you want to be intrepid, go to the third voice, and if you really want to be adventurous, go to that fourth voice, okay? But build up the muscles slowly. Number two, use your ears a lot. So you're going to have to distinguish between majors, minors, and seventh chords for the most part. And that brings me to my third point, which is focus on triads and dominant sevenths, not any weird sort of harmonies. That's going to get you a long way, at least in the beginning, to start that out. And the fourth thing, and this is probably the most important, you have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to try something that might sound bad and then try something else until you find those notes. All right, so if you're good at doing trial and error and you don't get your feelings bruised by choosing a wrong note here and there, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Okay, on to the video. Hope you enjoy it. All right, gang, let's go over this. First things first, you can download the tab from the link below. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Now, the tab has 5 lines on it. The first line is the chords that you'll see how we build up. And then and that's kind of how I think about it. And then each of the following lines, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, are the 4-part harmonies to this. And you'll see how we build it up. It's just each voicing of the chord, which makes it easy to think about. Okay, so if I'm going to start doing this, and by the way, you don't have to use 4-part. You could use 2-part or 3-part, and this method works equally well. All right, in fact, better. It's a lot easier. All right, let's take the first, so I'll show you how we do that. So if you look at that first line, which is really the, right? So that's the first line, and if we play the chords that are over that, I'm going to play them a little bit slower. All right, we can see how it's all harmonized, and there are some things that are moving there. So I want to show you kind of how we can build that up. And we'll do it voice by voice. So I always start with the strongest part of the melody line if I can, and that's this line right here. Now I'll say before you start with that, it's also helpful to know the key of the song. So if you play around with it a little bit, you'll find that the predominant key in this song is G major. So that's what we're going to go with, and it helps you a little bit with knowing how you want to harmonize those voicings. As we'll see, it's not a foolproof guide, but because keys can change and that can happen in the middle of a song, but it helps. So let's start with that. So now we've got the top voice. I think of that as very often the top voice. We want the melody very often to be the top voice. So I'm going to start out with that. So now I've got to harmonize that line. And one of the things that if you listen carefully, you find that there's usually at least one of the voices is moving, and sometimes more than that. So for example, in this, that's two notes of the same one in a row, so I might want to move one of the voices. So that's part of how I think about this. All right, so let's add the second one. Since this is in G, maybe it makes sense to harmonize it as a third. So there we go. So I'm going to try just another note that's in the scale. I'm going to try, so I'm playing this G here on the 8th fret of the second string. I'm going to harmonize it from below. And this is really just part of a G triad, okay? That sounds good. All right, now the second one is here. So that's the same one. We could just play the same thing. Or we could try moving that voice. Let's try moving it and see how that sounds. Still sort of works. So we could go with that, right? So that could be our two chords that we play. And now the next one is here. Maybe we could just leave this here and see how that sounds. Not too bad. Okay, and now we're going to go with, all right, so this sounds like a D to me. So I'm going to play the 7th. Okay, now let's just try the normal double stops. And that's perfectly good. That would work in staying in that key. So let's see what we've got right now. So we've got all right, so far that's pretty good. And so we can continue on that. We can add a third voice. So we started out with this. Why don't we just start out on the G, because it's a G chord that it's starting out on. Sounds good. And what if we leave that on the second one, because we've already got the second voice moving, so let's just play this. That sounds pretty good too. Now, don't think that I just came to this immediately. I didn't. This took, a decent amount of playing around and finding the right notes. But so far we've got. Now the next one was here. So let's find another note. That doesn't work. No. How about this? That sounds good. So now we've got. Okay, now we went to this part right here. That might work just straight. Nope, that's not right. The G isn't right there. If we listen to it, it does change. The key has a subtle change there. It's actually an A7. So if I play something like I've already got my A down there, and then I know this is a little A7 chord right here, but I don't have that top voice. I'll just play the middle three strings. All right, and now I've got to go. I had this. So I want to add another note that sounds good. How about this? That's not too bad. That's not too bad. So let's try it. That would work. There's other ways of doing this as well. We could add a note on the bottom, like a bass note on the bottom, and that might be okay. But in any event, that would be perfectly fine for doing 3-part harmony. That would sound really killer, I think, if you wanted to do it that way. Now you'll notice in my harmonization I did it a little bit differently, and that's because I looked for that 4th voice, and that's harder to do. So I start out with this. I'll show you how I did it, but that does take a little more time. And on the other hand, you can be more creative with it as well, and I'll show you where that can happen. Okay, so let's just add the bottom there. That sounds good. Now, this one looks like an E minor chord to me, so I'm going to add that E minor bass. That sounds good too. Now this one, that's sort of an A minor triad. I need to find a note that so far we went. I could leave it right there if I wanted to. I could just leave it there and play this. That sounds perfectly good, right? To play this lower voicing on the 7th fret on the 5th string. That sounds good. I didn't end up doing that. I ended up playing this. I ended up playing that, so I have a bottom voicing like this, which I think is okay. But again, I could have just left it there and it'd be perfectly fine. So why don't we just leave it there and see how that sounds. So now we've got... Now D. Okay, now this one we were going to A7, right? Here it comes in a bit of a difficulty. I can't add the top voice. If I add that top voice, it's going to sound goofy. That doesn't sound right, does it? Because I shifted my melody line and I put sort of a lower voice on the top. So that doesn't seem to work. I want to add something that's in the A7 chord, but let's see what I've already got. So I've already got the 7th, the flatted 7th of the A7, which is G. I've already got my E, right? A7 is spelled A, C sharp, E, and G. So I've already got my G, I've already got my E, I've already got my A, so I need a C sharp in there. Well, unfortunately, there's one right there, but I can't grab it because I'm grabbing my E there. I could play around with that. I could play the E like here. That would work, and I can finger that. You know, I didn't think of that when I was doing this. That would have been a good one. Or I could also try and play it up here, which is a tough stretch. So remember, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because whatever you come up with, you're going to be playing it in different, when you play the lines, you'll be playing the lines separately. So you can play that. It won't be a terrible stretch for you. But sometimes it does help thinking of the chords. So that one works. So, and then we had, what was it? This one, right? So I need an F sharp in there. Yeah, an F sharp, because I've got D, I've got, oh, there's an F sharp right there, and I've got an A. So D, F sharp, and A spells D. I've already got all the notes, but I want to add a fourth one. I could add a D down here. That would work. Or I could add the F sharp right here. Either one of those is going to work. And, you know, whatever works out. In the end, I found that this was really easy to conceptualize, so I ended up doing it that way. All right, well, in any event, that's how I did that one. And you can see how you just build it up one voice at a time and try for the chords that seem to make sense to your ears. And believe me, you'll find something that works. So that's how that is. Now, let's build it. Now let's go on the tab. And the tab is going to be exactly, you know, it's a little bit different than what we just did because I wanted to show you the process of how you build that up. The tab that I've got starts out like this. Right? So it's that part right there. So now we'll play the whole thing, and you'll see that on part 1, which I've got up on the video right now, you see that part 1 is really just the top line of those chords. Okay, I'm going to give a G chord first just for timing's sake in the looper, and we'll try and build this up, okay? So here we go. All right, so that's the first voice. So far, nothing at all special, right? So we'll add to that, and we'll add the second line. So now I'm going to add part 2, which starts like this. Sounds bad by itself, but it'll sound good, trust me. All right, so here we go. Okay, now we're going to add the third part. All right, let's see if we got it. Sounding pretty good. Anxious for that fourth part now. Okay, here we go. Here's the fourth part now. All right, let's listen to it. Pretty neat, huh? And yeah, so just start out with the simple chords, break them all up, write down the voicings separately. You can do 2-part harmony really easily. You can do 3-part harmony fairly easily as well, with triads and with snippets of 7th chords. And to do 4-part definitely takes some time and some work, especially on that 4th voice, and finding you have to sometimes twist your hands in knots to get the right voicings. But remember, you don't have to really play those chords. You just have to find the tones that work together. All right. All right, gang. Well, there you have it. Brian May style guitar harmonizing made easy. Hope you enjoyed this one. This is fun stuff to do, so I hope you enjoy it. You can do it just with a simple looper pedal, or really just anything that can record. Okay, we'll see you on down the road.